Yeah, and how do you take these things and make them practical and make them real? So I do an awful lot of work with an organization called CHX Performance, and their co-founder is a guy called Professor Chris Beatty. He is a professor of evolutionary anthropology and neuroscience at both Oxford and Kent University. But what I think you might find more interesting about this guy, Richard, is that he's studied for the last 20 years the relationship between mood and emotion and high performance.
Are you tired of working more for less profits in your home service business? What if I could show you $100,000 in hidden annual profits in your business in less than 3 minutes? Would you be interested? And not only show you where, but how to create that 100K in 6 months or less without additional advertising or marketing spend guaranteed. Just go to sharpenthespearcoaching.com to see how truly simple it is. That's sharpenthespearcoaching.com. Do it now. And we are back on STS Sharpen the Spear podcast with another incredible guest. I've got Rachael Edmonson-Clarke. We got the double last name. You know it's going to be awesome. Just for that reason. No, way beyond that. But Rachael, so excited to have you here, and we're going to do what we always do. No one knows Rachael better than Rachael. So Rachael, backstory, brings us up to speed, and we're going to tear into the conversation.
Richard, thank you so much for having me on. I am super excited to have this conversation with you. I have listened into a number of your podcasts, and I can say I am a big fan of you and of the show.
Thank you.
It's good to be here. It really is. So my backstory, I know this is where you always start, right? So from the age of 12, I grew up in my mum's hair and beauty salon. I worked there until I was 21. And I then took a bit of the sort of the traditional route of college and university and into corporate life. And I guess I have rebuilt my career and I have built a brand new business from burnout. I've navigated some pretty hard seasons along the way, but where I'm at now is that I've built a business that I love. It's one that supports senior leaders in some of the biggest brands in the world. But I'll be really honest, those titles and that success mean nothing if you lose yourself along the way there. So that's why I started the business almost 10 years ago now, to help people to lead better, to live better, and to love what they do. So in short, I am a coach, I am a trainer, and sometimes speaker.
I love it. I love it. So Rachael, a lot of good things just in that little bit. Okay. First, coach, trainer, speaker, trainer. Okay. This means something to me. Okay. I always tell people, I go, listen, there's teachers and there's trainers. Okay. I'm a trainer. Here's the difference. A teacher is going to tell you to do 25 push-ups, and they're going to leave the room and expect you to get it done. I'm going to tell you to get on your face and do 25 push-ups. I'm going to get down there with you, make sure you're doing right to begin with as I'm banging them out with you. Then I'll stand and watch you get them done, and I want to see 25. I'll count them off for you, right? That's a trainer. We're about results, okay? Training's about teaching. I'm not saying it's not about results. I'm just saying there's a different mindset. And when you declare yourself a trainer, I have a much higher level of expectation from you. No pressure, okay?
I couldn't agree more. And something that I really pride myself on is that there's nothing that, I've been healthily obsessed, I'm going to say, for like the last 20 years or more with what it is that makes us as human beings successful and happy and fulfilled and, and of practically trying the stuff. What is it that actually works? Like, I'm this constant scientist of myself, always wanting to work out like, okay, does this work? How can I apply this? And then you can really take it, and then you can train it, and you can teach it, and you can share with others. So I wholeheartedly believe in that. And there's nothing that I ask my clients to do that I haven't either done or don't consistently do for myself.
It's awesome, because I think you can't get legit feedback till you do it. And I try to tell people the same with athletics, right? I've done a lot in, from boxing to the Marine Corps to black belt to running. I've done all this stuff. It doesn't mean I'm the ultimate champion, the greatest at it, but when you do it, it gives you a new sense of awareness and ability to see. So I'll give you a quick example. Boxing, right? I got trained, I'm boxing, I'm working, I'm in the ring, I'm sparring, I'm doing all this stuff. But it wasn't until I put on the mitts and trained someone else and telling them to throw combinations and doing things, I saw it from the other side. All of a sudden, I became such a better boxer because of that, because training others. So it's really, I'm like, okay, so like I train my kids and I make them train each other, you know, and same thing to give them to go, okay, you need to understand where these are coming from. You got to see it from the other side, right? In business too, Rachel, I tell people you don't, because so many people don't look at things from their customer's perspective. They really are about what they do and how great they are and everything else. And if you can get to that other side and look, it changes the perspective so much. Now you start to communicate to the customer. You think you are, but you're really not until you understand where their pain is and all that good stuff.
And I totally believe in that. The way that we can have the greatest influence and positive impact with others, whether it's our customers, our teams, is when we can fully stand in their shoes and understand the world through their eyes. From that position, when you already know what is influencing them, you can then influence them in a really, really positive way. But to do that, you've got to be, you've got to be open, and you've got to be asking some really good questions. Yeah,
I love that. So let's talk about that for a second on the question aspect, because I actually had to learn this because my first 20 years in business, everyone already knows it was all about me. Okay. I wasn't asking anyone any questions about them. I'm just, let me do this great thing for you because I'm great. Okay. I'm not like that anymore, but I'd love to kind of get some insight from you on the question aspect, whether it's like, what are you saying? What do you get? And I kind of get it, what you got to delve into, but let's share that a little bit if you could.
And this comes from, even right from the first days for me back in corporate, my first role, I worked for Mars, as in Mars, Snickers, Twix, Pedigree, Caesar, Sheba, all the cat, Uncle Ben's, Dolmio. I worked for them. I went into a sales role, and the sales training that they did was absolutely phenomenal. We had 8 weeks in a hotel, in a place called Slough, which, if you've ever seen The Office, is where The Office.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, but I digress slightly. But the training was absolutely phenomenal before they even kind of sent you out in the field. And that whole, understanding your customer and understanding what was important to them. And I think for me in selling, one of the principles that Mars had, which really resonated deeply with my own values, was one of mutuality. So it was always about how you could find the win-win, and how actually when there was that win-win, that relationship would be endured and it would be a long-standing relationship. And I always think that we're in business, not necessarily to win, but we're in business because we want to stay in business. And it's about that longer game. And so how we can look after our clients and our customers really well is so important. And to do that, we've got to be listening and understanding what's going on for them. So back to your question, which was around the questions. I suppose it would depend. For me, and what I do with my clients at the moment is all about understanding where they are now, what's not working, what's the pain points, what's not how they'd like it to be. What do they want instead? What have they tried already? What has been useful? What hasn't been useful? Questions like, as a result of, this, what would be the 3 greatest and most impactful outcomes for you of the work that we're going to do together? But I recognize that probably my questions are very different with the kind of consultancy that I'm doing to when I was selling vending machines for Mars. And I think that one of the frameworks I can remember from those early days that was really quite helpful was thinking about things like, to sort of get into it, talking a bit about business, talking a bit about the external environment, talking a bit about them as an individual, and then talking about the actual specific kind of product category and that kind of, and thinking of those kind of 4 areas that sort of helped you lead and sort of navigate those conversations quite well.
Yeah, I think what you're saying, here's the important thing, the big takeaway, and you hit it just right, Rachel, because it's what are the biggest challenges? What are you struggling in? It doesn't matter the particulars, right? Those questions like that work for every single business. Every business is challenged by something at some point or another, right? We talked about seasons earlier. You mentioned that. Like every business is in a different season, right? What they did at startup is not what they're doing in the middle, but and now maybe they're at the tail end. Maybe they're 20 years in, but they still have problems. They still have challenges. They're always going to have that. So that approach to me, I'm exactly the same. You want to, and I have the three words I love saying. It's tell me more. Like it's one of the, that is one of the greatest, easiest things to do, because I always tell people listening is a silent form of flattery. Okay. If you can say things like, tell me more, and then they talk more, the more you listen, and I'm just saying, the more they're flattered. Like you're paying attention, you're looking at them, you're taking a note, whatever you're doing, but you're also getting everything you need to actually serve them at the highest level. Right.
And sometimes some of the questions require some framing, which I think can be really useful as well. So, just sort of setting it up, setting the scene so that so that you can, I think keeping that rapport while you're asking those questions is really key. I don't know if you just saw, Richard, I leaned on my bookshelf. I don't know. Have you read this book? I don't know if you've seen this one before.
I have not. Value-based fees. I like it. I like the whole concept already. I like being high value and getting paid. I like both of those things.
So for anyone listening and not watching, it's Value-Based Fees, How to Charge What You're Worth and Get What You Charge by Alan Weiss. And he's got some fabulous questions in here, and 13, in fact, a good question. I won't read them all out, but there's one or two that are kind of...
Let's hear them.
Okay. So what will be the difference to your organization at the conclusion of this project? And what will you be able to do that you can't do now? What will be the effect on sales, profit, market share, and so on? I like this one from a personal point of view. What will be the difference for your reputation, your image, your standing, your stature, and so on? What will it mean to you personally? What will you be proudest of at the conclusion of this project? What will the legacy of it be? And what will it mean to be on the leading edge and really at the front of your field with this? So I see some lovely questions in there.
Those are great. A few of those, so maybe the last, but the three before that, I label those as vanity questions.
Yeah.
Because you're really tapping how are you going to feel? What's this going to do for you, right? And it's really important to have those. Those are really good questions because you have to get them emotionally attached to these outcomes. And once they're emotionally attached to the outcomes, you're closing deals, right? Because now they want it. We all know they need it, but you got to get them to the want portion, right? That's really important. It's like, no, I got to have this.
You're talking that, and it's reminding me of something that's been so important to me in my business journey. And that has been so I lost pretty much 95% of my business during COVID, and I had to rebuild. And that was really tough. And one of the toughest things for me during that 18 months of rebuilding was remaining in a place that was magnetic in terms of my energy when I was talking with clients about getting business. And this, I think, is really hard if you are, you're wanting to bring the money in, things are tight this month and you really want to close that deal with that client, but actually remaining in that space where you're holding them with that open hand, because I think if you have a needy energy, that can really come across at that point. And so that becomes unattractive and you will do the opposite to what you want to do. So really holding that space for that kind of energy in those conversations is so important, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you, Rachel, because it's desperation. I mean, you're like, I got it, and when you have to have it. So I do a little exercise too, because I get it. I've been there, we've all kind of been, I've been 35 years in business, okay, doing business. So I've been on the full ride, the 35-year roller coaster. Okay. I've done all this stuff, but I had to start telling myself, like, it's like prepping. It's prepping for your sales call. Here's my assessment I'm going to do. I'm here to serve them. I had to just remind myself, I'm only here to serve you. Obviously I have an outcome. Okay. But my outcome is still for them, right? My personal outcome obviously is to land a client and be paid for helping them, but I become 100% focused on their outcomes and what I can do, because what I learned, Rachel, was my greatest joy comes from giving these business owners their freedom, right? Giving them their profit, giving them their impact that they can't get right now. They're stuck, right? So I can unstick them and then take them to a point they've been in business 8 years, 10 years, and they haven't gotten. Then all of a sudden in 6 to 12 months, they had their freedom. They're spending time with their family. They're doing all the things they started the business to do that they never could, right? So I have to like visualize that and stay focused on that, and that closes my deal. It's not about me at all. So I'm totally with you, because you'll get into that. I got to have this. If I don't get this, I can't make the mortgage payment. I can't do this. Like you have to have a discipline that just puts that to the side and just laser focus on your customer, because they feel that, like you're saying, the energy, they feel that, they get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And even in those prospecting calls, it's like, if I'm not, another book that I love is The Go-Giver by Bob Berg. You know, if I'm not the right person to help or support you, I'll let you know, and I'll do my best to help support you or signpost you in a way that's useful and helpful to you. Because you just never know when even that person might not be a client right now, but where they might recommend or something might come around. So it is constantly keeping that service in mind.
Yeah. It's really what you just said there is like, it's that you don't know. Just because I'm not a fit for this person. So I had this just the other day with a person I know. He's in Florida. I'm up here, and he had a client, high-end client, but she was like, "You're too positive." Okay, you're just too positive a person, and it just wasn't a fit, right? But you know who she does fit with? Oh, me. Now I'm positive, but I'm a little, I'm different. Okay. So it's like, there's a different fit. So it's that he didn't get that, but then, hey, you need to talk to Richard, or this. Same thing with your client. Your client will say, well, maybe I'm not at that level that I offer, but I know someone who is, because a lot of times people, I just can't afford you right now. I'm not there. Okay. Well, do you know who could?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I got my friend Jonathan. He's killing it. Let me get you in contact with him. Worth every minute you spent with him or her, right? Just, it's beautiful. So that's the mindset you need to have. Okay. All of these connections, it takes one referral sometimes, sometimes, again, we talked about being in that desperate place. Things are really hard trying to get it done. It takes just one nod, one introduction can change the whole trajectory for you. So you have to keep that kind of stuff in mind. Again, that's being positive, obviously. But you want to make sure that you're keeping that, not only in the front of your mind, but I think, Rachel, you have to understand that that's an outcome. That can be one of your outcomes, because there's no bad prospect. There's no bad sales call, none of that stuff. You can get fruit from that, right? Now, in business, we also have upsells and downsells. Like I talk to people, they're going to be in my ecosystem at some point. Even if it's the lowest level to begin with, they're going to be part of what I am. And then that's going to enable them to go up that ladder, if you will, right? Because what I give them, even at the lowest level, is going to make them better, so they go next level from.
I love that. Yes.
It's good stuff. So we want to always think. So let's talk a little bit about the leadership aspect. Okay. I'm doing this because, we're talking sales and we're talking leadership and all that stuff. So I'm going to put this out there. So in the world, especially the world of podcasting and all this stuff, we get a lot of people that want to be on our shows and things like that. All of a sudden, you'll see these shifts. And again, I've been around enough where all of a sudden, you know what the bulk of it is? Leadership trainers, leadership coaches, leadership. Okay. Now, earlier we talked about trainers and teachers, right? This is where that's going to come back and play here. Okay. And I called most of the leadership coaches I've seen or spoke to, I call them AT, all talk. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
There's a lot of talk going on. There's a lot of concepts going on, but there's no practical application. Okay. And that's why I made the differentiation with you being a trainer. Okay. Because this is the difference, right? We have to produce results. You can't just talk about leading, waxing eloquent about stuff. And I've had quality leadership coaches on my show. Really, really good. I'm very particular. Okay. So let's get a little insight from you, right? You're in that vein, all right, of quality. So let's kind of hear your perspective on this stuff. Again, I'm not throwing every leadership coach or whatever under the bus. I'm just saying, like, there's a difference.
Yeah, and how do you take these things and make them practical and make them real? So I do an awful lot of work with an organization called CHX Performance, and their co-founder is a guy called Professor Chris Beedie. He is a professor of evolutionary anthropology and neuroscience at both Oxford and Kent University. But what I think you might find more interesting about this guy, Richard, is that he's studied for the last 20 years the relationship between mood and emotion and high performance. So he's worked with the British Army, he's worked with elite performance and endurance athletes, and together we work with a lot of people in the corporate environment and corporate and leaders who want to be able to sustainably perform at their best and help their teams to do the same. And if we think about what drives our results, it's our actions, it's our behaviors, but what's driving that is often how we feel. And I think what can be misconstrued very often is this, that, feelings don't matter, I'm just going to brush those aside, or I'm just going to get on with stuff, or whatever it is. Whereas actually they are really, really useful signals. And what I love about the work that Professor Chris Beedie has done is he takes it and he makes it very tangible, very easy to understand. How do we better understand our feelings? What's mood related? What's emotion related? What are the inputs that then impact my mood, my energy, and my ability to deal with stress as a leader? And what are the things that might trigger me emotionally? And how can I resolve those? And how can I regularly restore my mood so that I can show up as the best leader that I want to be, and I can behave in the way that I want to and I aspire to behave in, and I can get the best out of my people and my clients and myself, and be the mom, the dad, and all of that I want to be. So I'd be very happy to dive into some of how that works, and from a practical point of view, because it is, and it's so simple when you kind of go, oh, okay, I get that. It's not a
Right.
complicated thing.
You know what's interesting, Rachel, is in this whole evolution of coaching and the availability of coaches, and in every kind of area you can imagine. I mean, 30 years ago, it didn't exist. Okay, you had like a sports coach and that was it. Maybe high level, C-level executive coaching costs you a fortune, and whatever, and they come and do whatever they do. We didn't have that available to us like when I began. But what you're saying, it's the ability to break it down into practical steps. Okay. But what also evolved was emotional intelligence. No one knew what that was 5, 7, 10 years ago, right? EQ. And that is probably a part of this as well.
Yep.
We know as entrepreneurs, one of the strongest traits of the higher performing entrepreneurs, or entrepreneurs in general, is self-awareness. Okay, so self-awareness is a place where you begin with this stuff you just mentioned. Okay, this ties into self-awareness, because if you're unable to have self-awareness, if you don't have it, if it's not a I'll call it a trait. I don't have a better word for it, right? If you don't have that trait, it's going to be difficult for you to do things about, well, what's my mood? How am I feeling? What's my emotion? Because you're not concerned about that,
And here's one of the things for me, and this was big for me moving from corporate into owning my own business. And that was like, all of a sudden, there was this real realization for me. If my business isn't doing well, there's one person that buck stops with, and it's me. So I got to take a look at me. If my business ain't where I want it to be, it's because there's something within me that's causing the issue there.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's funny, to a lot of us, that's an obvious thing. That's an assumption, really, right? But in reality, a lot of people don't want that buck stopping with them. I always tell people, I'm always like, it's on you, Bill. If Bill's the owner or whatever, and he's walking around and he's mad at people, I'm like, Bill, man, it's all on you, man. It's all you. Where you at? Why you're not here? Why aren't you taking care of? This is your problem. They're not a bad manager. You're the bad owner. Fix it.
It can be quite scary, and it can be quite daunting. And I get that, because, being able to take that long, hard look at yourself and kind of go, okay, maybe I'm not getting everything right here. Maybe I've still got things to learn. And by the way, I think we've always got something to learn. We're never gonna learn. I'm gonna be a constant learner until the day that I die. But growth isn't always comfortable, right? And it can get uncomfortable. And so And because of the way that we're wired, we will want to move towards the, that short-term pleasure versus, the longer term and the immediate discomfort of, maybe trying to change our
Yeah.
behaviors, change how we
Yeah.
are, or understand,
Right.
what could be different.
I
But
think
for me,
what no, I was going to say what people need to realize is that leaders aren't born. Like all this stuff you can learn. If you ever read the book Grit by Angela Duckworth, phenomenal book, right? And great researcher. What did she come up with? It's learned. Okay, this is what the most successful people have. Is this, and you can be taught it. Just like leadership, you can be taught it. So that has to be your shift in your head first. Like I can learn, I can become a better leader. No one's the natural leader. I mean, some people have different personalities and they may be able to draw people to them and do things. Doesn't make them make all the right decisions by any stretch of the imagination, right? Doesn't make them actually have everybody follow them in the way they should. They can't direct them always in the way that they need to be directed. So these are all learned traits, right?
absolutely. You get so many, particularly for me in my area where I'm working in the corporate sphere, you get so many managers and leaders that get promoted because they're good at their discipline, but actually they've never been taught how to lead and manage well. One of the things that you were talking about there that just came to my mind as well, and I think this is a really important distinction to make, and it comes back to what I was saying around the tangibles of feelings, not just our feelings. And you'll appreciate this with your background in the military as well. And that is the courses and the things that I will train and the work that I will do with people comes, yes, from a traditional method of cognitive resources, strategy, tasks, the stuff that we can learn. But also what's less traditional is, well, how do we make sure that we've not only got the capabilities to lead well and those skills to lead well, but we've got the capacity to do it. We've got the capacity metabolically and emotionally to show up as we want, because it's no bloody good knowing all this stuff about how to lead if you can't manage your emotions or master that or understand what's going on there or have that awareness. You've got to be able to apply it. I work with companies that have leadership frameworks and competencies, but are they truly helping the people show up to be able to have the capacity to behave in those ways that they want?
Let me ask you this, because I don't want to veer us off here, but so when I look at those kind of things you just said, the one thing I always add to it with my clients and stuff like that is that where you at in your health journey? Are you fit? What are you stuffing in your pie hole? What are you eating? What do because you said you got to be able to perform, right? You need the energy, right?
Yes.
You've got to have the clarity, the cognitive clarity and everything else. A lot of that stuff is bogged down because of the garbage we eat. Okay. And it's proven stuff, right? So I always try to go, okay, we're going to take a little bit of time. We're going to work on that. That's going to be an ongoing process, but where are we at on that? What does that look like? Everything from like how much sunshine you get, like how much vitamin D, or, like we have to be healthy. We have to perform at a high level. And the guy you were talking about, the professor,
Chris
BD. Yeah.
Beebe.
So him, but I guarantee he's dealing with that too. Right?
Oh my,
I mean, yeah.
so much. In fact, I mean, here's the thing. I was in a one-on-one coaching call a little bit earlier today, and the first time I'd actually met this person, they're on a program with me. They couldn't make the program. We were catching up. First question I had for her: when was the last time you got up and moved and got some daylight? And she was like, whoa, I can't remember. I'm like, right, how about we take this on as a phone call for the first 10 minutes, and you get out and I can see it sun shining from the Zoom call here. Like you get out in that sunshine and you go walk out, and we'll walk and talk. Because this is what I was talking about, the very practical aspects of what Chris teaches. So from a mood perspective, our mood is a signal of how well restored we are biologically, internally. It's that biofeedback loop to us as to how well are we doing internally. And we've really got 3 environmental inputs that will help us with our energy, our mood, and our ability to deal with stress. And those three environmental inputs are your physical environment. So that's movement, that's daylight, that's temperature. If any of those are out of whack, and that it's going to be very hard for you to perform at your best. You've got your biological environment, which is exactly what you were just saying. It's what you are eating, the nutrition, and how often and how regularly are you eating? Are you putting your body into any kind of, stress because of it's not a regular pattern with that? And then you've got your social environment as well. And when I say social environment, what I mean about this is like spending time with people who you care about and who care about you. It's those people that fill your soul. That doesn't always have to be people that you love. It can be people, like good mentors or coaches and people like that. But people who fill your cup up. You can, in all of those environments can interlink as well, which is great. You can go for a walk with somebody you care about and get some lunch while you're doing it. You can do these things. But here's the thing, like we have stresses that are upon us every day, and we have demands that we need to meet. But where's our resources, and are we topping those resources up? And what are our let's get down to some minutiae here in terms of practicalities. What are the small things, the small daily habits that mean that you are constantly restoring yourself so that you can perform at your best? The daylight thing. Are you opening your curtains when you wake up in the morning to get that daylight, to kickstart your circadian rhythm? Because our bodies are all working on these rhythms so that we're getting that daylight in our eyes, and are you getting to bed at a reasonable hour so that, because we all know, don't we, that the day starts the night before. So what's the sleep like you're getting? Anyway.
Exactly. No, it's awesome because, and here's the thing too on all that, because all this is like, I love all this. I love anything about all this stuff, right? So let's start with the sleep. Like I told people, like, well, I'm in bed at 9 p.m. I get up at 4 a.m. 7 days a week. That's what I do. 7 days a week. There's no sleeping in. If I sleep in, it's like 4:15. Okay.
Yeah, and it's
right. And it makes a difference. And I tell them too, Rachel, women, okay, that 11 p.m. to like 1 a.m., you need to be sleeping because that's when your adrenal glands recharge. Men, we have more testosterone. We can kind of power through that if we don't get it. We still need it. But women especially, you can't be up during that time because it's so critical. They'll start doing more caffeine and trying to make up the difference and all that kind of stuff. So it really drags them down. And when they get into the sleep is huge. I'll give you an example. My son's in the Marine Corps now too. Okay. Now I'm not still in, obviously, but what they learned, even the Marine Corps used to go and he guards embassies, right? So he's out in Europe and he's an embassy guard and all this stuff. So MSG school. They used to put him on these 12-hour shifts and 18-hour shifts and do all this stuff, right? Well, they finally learned through circadian rhythms, like that's totally ineffective. Now they work 8-hour shifts, okay? And they do this and they get the rest and everything else. Now they're all performing at a high level, okay? Because when the stressors do come, you can function at a high level. But if you're beat down, and I always think of this with like the whole doctors in residency and they work them to death. Days and are working 20. I'm like, why? You're a health professional and you're putting yourself through that. And then so like, we're not going to get, I could spend a whole show just on that allopathic medicine, but we're not going to do that. But I mean, it's like, you gotta take the knowledge now and that science from a performance standpoint and apply it as a business owner, cause I have this little saying, we say, if you're not fit, you're not fit to lead. Okay. And fit, and it doesn't just mean physically. It's nutritionally, it's your mind, it's how sharp you are. It's all, you're fit. You have the ability to deal with stress. You have the ability to manage people. That's fitness, okay, in the grander scope. So, yeah, there's my rant. That's my rant.
And we have a broader bandwidth to be able to deal with the stresses and the challenges then. It's like one day, something that the kids might do, I might laugh at. And the same day, another day, they might do something very similar, but I snap at them because I just don't have the same bandwidth. It's not that the work changed. It's not that it's the workload that's the problem. It's actually my ability and my habits to be able to restore and resolve and, really look after myself. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's just there are things when again, this goes back to self-awareness side too. I think Rachel, because it's that ability to know, like, even if you did, I'm going to air quote, the wrong thing, said the wrong thing, did the wrong thing. We've all been in those situations, right? We get that quick snapback and it's like, oops, I had to do that the other day. I left the house and I had one of those and came home 9 hours later and walked in and said, I got to apologize for this morning, which I'm not a big apologizer. I'm working on it. But I actually was like, I could come in and my wife just looked at me. She goes, like, shocked, like, okay. I'm like, because that was just wrong. I don't know what was going on, but I got to tell you, I'm sorry because that was like totally wrong, but and that's, like I said, that's part of being fit, understanding you're doing that.
One of the biggest things that I learned a few years ago, because I used to think mindset's everything, and I've been all up for the last 20 years or more, right? I master my emotions. I decide how I feel. I choose what I focus on and all of that stuff and that. And what I realized that I was missing big time, particularly after I had children, was I was missing out on the biology behind it. And so I wasn't getting the sleep. And I wasn't maybe getting some of those from those environmental inputs that we've just been talking about. I didn't have habits that served and looked after that. And so then trying to engage my executive brain was like pushing water up a hill. Yes, I was doing it, but was it, like some of that conscious regulation, which we all have to do from time to time, becomes much harder if you haven't looked after the little things. I think sometimes those little things are the big things. Back to like the practicality of leadership, and what we're talking about here is how do we lead well? Well, we first lead ourselves bloody well. And as my jumper says just here, it's about that self-care, and it's about looking after yourself and those little habits. How often are you getting up and moving from your desk? How often are you eating nutritious meals? What is your protocol? Are you sticking to it, etc.?
Yeah, there's something really important about this, because too many times people, and I'll give a qualifier too, but people will call you selfish. Now, I got to get to the gym. I'm going to the gym. Okay. Now I go to the gym at 5:30 in the morning. Okay. Because no one cares that I go to the gym at 5:30 in the morning. Okay. So I go so I can always get the workout in, but they tend to say, well, and I'm prioritizing those things. So, well, you're just selfish. You should be doing this. I'm like, I can't do that if I don't do this. If I'm not developing and maintaining at a high level, how can I give from an empty cup? Right? Like, I have to fill this up. I have to be able to perform at this level. So this is why I can do that. So now there's the other side of total narcissism, right? Where you're just all about me and I'm going so I look better in the mirror and I'm consumed with myself. I'm not consumed with myself. I'm kind of more or less consumed with my performance. Right. I'm very big on the performance act. I even perform dark roast functional mushroom coffee. Okay. Like, everything's got the word perform in it from.
Tea. I knew we were going to.
Do you? Oh, see that?
To that.
You should listen to my episode with Jacob Myers from Laird Superfood. Okay. Laird Hamilton, Big Wave Surfer, all the functional mushroom stuff. What a cheap little plug I just did. Look at that. With you as the guest. But yes, they're amazing. That's all part of my morning routine. You can hear all about it on that episode. You'll be like, dang, this guy is into the mushroom stuff. But yeah, it's really, really great. But this is important, right? Like, and I say in there, man, cognitive, it does great things. It does a great, but we have to focus on that. We have to be diligent in maintaining those rituals, if you will, right? It's a ritual part because we're defined by our rituals, right?
It reminds me of a story of one of my clients, one of my one-on-one clients recently. And it's back to this self-care isn't selfish. And it was an absolute game changer for him because we were talking, he loves going out on his bike and he felt like it was the wrong thing to do to take time out of the business to go out on his bike until he realized that going out on his bike was business critical. It was a business activity for him to be performing and optimizing and being at his best.
Yeah, I'm with you. This morning, I'm rocking the heavy bag. Okay, I do that 3 days a week. I do 5 days a week. I work out maybe 6, depending on the week. But it gives me this pleasure, Okay, I get to hit this thing with everything I've got. You know, I have skills, but I have another goal, not just being fit for performance, but I need to maintain my dangerous status. Okay, I need to be dangerous because people ask me because I train really, really hard. I'm a little nutty. And people are like, are you training for a fight? I'm like, nope, just staying dangerous. And I walk away from them because I need that, right? Because I'm a
Yeah.
protector. I'm a provider. Like I have a family. I got to keep my skills sharp. So, and it just makes me feel so good. It's such a great way to start the day. You know, I mean, I leave it all there on the floor, you
Yeah.
know, on the bag, but the workouts to me it's a mental shift for the day, you know, and what I've shared before, like even on the one with the coffee, that functional mushroom coffee, I do 2 every morning. And I committed, I make no decisions. So the night before, I work out hard that day, have a hard day, you know, coaching people, doing all this, doing business, finally get home, stuff with the kids. And then I'm like, man, there's no way I'm working out tomorrow, man. I am toast. Okay. I've learned over the last like year and a half, I'm like, we don't talk that way. We make no decisions until the second cup in the morning is finished. So again, I start at 4 a.m. I'm doing Bible study. I'm doing all my stuff. And I get done with that second cup and I get up and go, we're going to the gym every single day. So I've given myself permission not to decide, you know, and all that. And it's like, it's been flawless. It's been awesome, you know.
There as well is I think it's so important to have that connection with ourselves and being able to tune in. Um, quick little story, and this only happened to me last night, but I started getting a real nasty pain in my lower back last night, sort of around about tea time, and it got progressively worse through the evening. It's unusual for me, don't normally suffer from back pain, but it meant that I was walking around the house like an old woman, and I was just like, and we'd had some sad news in our family as well. So an elderly relative had passed away yesterday, and so there'd been some stuff going on. And I was just like, it is now time to treat myself with some compassion and some kindness. And when my eldest went to bed, I went to bed as well. And when I was lying there and it was still, you know, my back was still sore and it was still uncomfortable, I was like, right, lights out. I'm gonna get some sleep. I slept 7.5 hours and back to sleep and the restorative nature of it. I've woken up and touch wood. I have been absolutely grand today.
Perfect.
I just, you know, I think, you know, I think that connection to ourselves. And the other thing I was just going to say here as well is recognizing that sometimes the physical movement that we need or the restoration that we need might not always be the hard hitting gym session.
Right.
And being connected with ourselves enough, like you're saying, you've had your 2 coffees in the morning, you're really connecting with yourself. We're like, what's going to serve me best right now? Sometimes it might be a power nap. It might be a gentle walk out in nature. It might be some yoga or some breathing or some stretching or, you know, just something that is deeply restorative in that movement and not necessarily, you know, iron pumping. And I think it's important to give ourselves permission for that space as well. That's really what I was trying to get across with that
Yeah,
message.
no, 100%. Because I'll get the day. I've had all these great workouts for 5 days a week, 2 weeks, and all of a sudden, and this was last Friday, a week ago, and I'm like, I got 3 rounds in, got my 4th round on the bed. I'm like, I'm done. There's nothing left. I have nothing. I'm going home, and I just took my unwrap, did the whole deal. I'm like, I'm out. Totally okay with it. Didn't beat myself up. I'm like, you have to. It's that old listen to your body thing. But same thing like you're saying, I'll go out in the yard, you know, bare feet. I'll do the grounding, walking on the grass, the dew in the morning, watching the sun come up because I'm up early enough to actually look at the sun as it's coming above the horizon. I've got the perfect chair in the house to the eastern window, and I can watch the whole thing coming up, you know, and while I'm working on my coffees, you know, it's a good thing. That to me is therapeutic as well, right?
Yeah.
I understand the need for that. Sometimes it's just a 3-mile walk.
Yeah.
Got a lot of hills, but we just go out. It's going to go down and back. That's all I can do today. That's all I need, you know, if I don't get anything else in, you know, but it's then my mind works at that same time. So I refresh my mind during that period, just like the morning. There's all that and it's just, and I'm only saying this for people like, just like you said, Rachel, like somebody, it's not, yeah, I go and I kill it at the gym, right? I get it. But there's days when you don't need to, or you can't do that. You have to restore. You have to store mentally, because that connection, they call it neuromuscular, right? The mind and the muscle has to connect. That controls what happens, that back pain, everything else. Those are symptomatic, right? Those are things that are caused due to stress or cortisol levels or whatever that might be. So again, back to self-awareness, like, are we listening to our body? I mean, there's times when you're just, because I love training, I'm like, there's times when I'm just being weak-minded. I use the phrase a little girl. I'm being a little girl right now. Okay. And I have to push through and do that. There's other times when I wrap it up and I go home, because if I continue, it's not going to be good and I'll probably injure myself.
And there's a distinction there, isn't there? But actually, how aware are we of those different thoughts and those distinctions in our own mind? Because it's a really important one, because, the little girl, as you described it then, could come in and sabotage not only the training, but also maybe some of your consistency around some of your habits with your systems and your processes in business as well. And you've got to really watch out for where is that versus, hang on a minute, I do need to take the break, and I will come back better and stronger for doing that.
Yeah, it's not, you can't think of it as quitting, okay? Because I'm an anti-quitter. I'm not into quitting. It's disgraceful in my mind. So I don't put a label on that kind of activity, that decision as quitting. It's recovery. And it's served me well, like, my entire life. I've known always, like, I have to stop now. If I go more, there's going to be injury, not just fatigue. There's going to be injury.
Yeah, and it's restoration, and it's investment. It's investing in a better version of you. Because I think we've possibly all done this, or something similar at times, where you push through because you've got a project deadline, or you've got something to work with, key something coming up with clients or what have you, and you stay there and you push through. And it's okay to do that in the short term, where you pay the price on some of these habits that we're talking about. You pay the price, but actually, how do you get back to those then as quickly as you can, and make sure that it doesn't become a habit that you're paying the price?
Exactly. I see that all the time. It's the hustle and grind culture.
Yes.
Work more, and I'm like, you're a fool. You're a fool. Okay? Like, you're listening to the wrong people.
I think we're hustling and we're grinding because we think we're going to be okay when that thing that, we're striving for, the business has got to hear, or that it's making this much money, or that I've got this thing or that thing, and that's what's going to make us happy. But actually can have those feelings right now. This is where I think being aligned with your values, understanding what they are, being clear on what you care about the most and the criteria that's going to meet those values, experiencing that right now, because at the end of the day, there is no over there. There's only what's right. There's only moment to moment to moment, and where we are right now. So, there's no guarantees that I'm going to wake up even tomorrow. So how do we make sure that we are enjoying that moment and enjoying the journey along the way? And I think so much of what we've been talking about is something that I would sort of describe as that wholehearted leadership. This isn't just about, kind of the business stuff, but we bring our whole selves to that leadership role, and how we do that, I think, is really important.
I think you're right, because especially from the business owner standpoint, especially in the small to mid-sized businesses, it's an obsession. Let's just be honest. Okay. It's an obsession. I also nickname it a mistress who wants all your time, all your attention. It wants everything from you. Okay, always. And if you can't say no, okay, you're just going to go down that road you were just talking about, where now it becomes the norm. 80 hours a week is how I live. I work 80 hours a week. That's how you do it. That's what you have to do to succeed. Well, I can always challenge that, right? I mean, it's easy, actually, and I can get people off that pretty fast. I get the same thing done in 25 hours as you're doing at 80. You know what I mean? So I'll show you that. But if you're willing, if you believe that's possible, but it is the big picture. It's the whole, not just the parts as it goes, right? We need to understand that the way we operate all the way around, and that's family and it's children and it's friends. So I got the five F's. It's faith, family, finances, fitness, and friendships. Okay. Those are the 5 things we're balancing out and that's in our work, in our home, and how do you get to that, right? So a lot of one of the caveats I give to people, I said, but first, if your business is all messed up, it's a hot mess, you don't get any of the 5 F's, because that's that mistress that's going to keep calling. You're going to think about it. You're going to lay down thinking about it, wake up thinking about it. You're going to keep doing all this stuff where you're never going to have any semblance of balance, and it's not balance that's equal, right? It's not, I get 15.5% of each. It's like, no, you have attention in each area. You're able to give attention to each area, right? So it's a bigger conversation, but people need to understand, like, the things like you're bringing, what you're talking about from a leadership standpoint, from the training in this stuff, that we have to be able to perform at an optimal level to even take this stuff in, right? So there's kind of this trade-off, like you either can do it parallel, like I'm working on my health and I'm working on my leadership. That's ideal, right? Or but if you're never going to approach your health and your air quote and fitness, right? All that stuff you're learning is not going to be applied properly, right? So it's like investing in college in this major and you go and never do the major. Well, what'd you drop the $150,000 for? You're a waitress now. What are you doing? It's like you think about that as like that's what it is, right? So we have to look at this whole and bring it and understand that it's all part of it. You don't really get to pick and choose, right?
No, you don't. You don't. I know that we wear different hats and we will show up as sort of with different personas in different roles in our lives, but ultimately it is it's us at the end of the day. It's it's for the whole person. It's you were talking then, and it reminded me of a lovely little story that someone shared with me the other day. You talked about the the it's not about balance, but it's about this kind of connection. And the story that was shared with me, and I thought this was such a beautiful way of looking at this. It was the story of a martial arts master and their student. And the student said, "Master, you are always in balance. You are always in alignment." And he said, "No, I'm not." He said, "But I'm always making micro corrections." And what I really loved about that is that even though at some level it might look like we are aligned and we are balanced, let's be really truthful here. I think we've got to such a stage whereby we're able to make those micro corrections, so we're not doing massive swings of the pendulum, and it might look on the surface like we're it's all right. Little micro corrections all of the time that's going on with our mindset, with our physical, the physicality stuff that we've been talking about, all of that's happening to keep us in that really good zone and in that space to perform well.
I love it. Another analogy is that is ride a bicycle. You can't ride straight. You think you're riding straight. You're not. You're always crazy. You can't walk straight. A plane doesn't fly straight. It has a line it needs to follow, but it goes left, it goes right back on course, goes right back on course, and it keeps doing that. That's what radar literally does. It pings out and back to keep correcting your flight path. So we have to understand. And also you're just saying, guess what? You're never going to be perfect. There is no perfection. There's only the pursuit of it.
No, and I would say of excellence, actually, because really, is there anything or anyone that is actually perfect?
Yeah, I'll tell you, Rachel. Like we talk about me hitting the box and hitting the bag. Like I am a way better boxer now, 40 years after boxing, than I was when I boxed, and I was really good back then. I want to say I'm not as fit, okay. But my skills, my ability, everything I do because I've spent 40 years mastering it, right? I don't compete, I'm not in the ring. I don't do that stuff, but everything else I train, because I tell people, I know this is getting a little bit in the weeds, but it's like the heavy bag is an opponent. Every day, that's my ring. And I work that bag like that thing wants to hurt me. Okay. So and if you ask anyone at the gym, they're like, funny story. But this woman came in we're in a big office space, co-working space, and she comes walking up and she just goes, "What's your name?" And I go, "It's Richard. What's yours?" She goes, "I only knew you as a boxing guy. I see you over at the gym all the time, and I never knew who you were, but I see you all the time, like doing that." I'm like, "Well, there you go. So now you know. Now you're going to do so." But that's testament to habits and ritual. I'm consistent. I'm there. I do this stuff, and I think that's one of the big takeaways I think from this whole conversation is there is a consistency that we need to create, and you can call them rituals or whatever you want. There's continual learning, right? We've got that. We talk a little bit about balance, okay, and being off balance, in balance. We've got the health aspect, right? Being fit to lead. So many good things, Rachel, you've kind of touched on and we've kind of dove into.
It's something I'd like to just share because it's something that I found enormously useful. A lot of the time we will talk about balance and we'll talk about work-life balance. And I hear that a lot. And people want
Yes. Talk about this.
But actually, what I found far more useful is the concept or the idea of work-life integration, because work and life is so integrated today. Like, the phones and the stuff. So for me, and particularly with us running our own businesses and we have the opportunity to do that. And you have to work out what works for you. All my social media is on my second page of my home screen. All of my notifications on social media is switched off because otherwise my focus would be an absolute nightmare. I always leave my phone in the office when I go and have dinner with my family. But I have this wonderful freedom where I walk my children to school every morning. Like yesterday when we heard about the bereavement in our family, I was able to drive half an hour to my husband's office and half an hour back to just go give him a hug. And so I think it's this, don't necessarily, again, a balance sort of suggests that it's always going to be a bit wobbly. How do we integrate work and life in a way that works?
I love it. Yeah, I love that. That's a great way to think about it because I do the same thing. Though I completely remove social media from my phone. There's zero temptation because I'm not that way. I'm an all or nothing guy. But, I'm just like, I'm not into it. Someone else has to do that stuff. But I'm with you completely. That ability to set aside distraction, okay, that's part of the integration process. You have to learn, you have to accept what actually distracts you, right? And you have to, if your phone is that bad, get a flip phone. Get rid of the smartphone altogether and get the flip phone. But I do my whole business on it, really. Like, you can't do it on a laptop or something. I'm like, come on now. You have to call people out sometimes. It's like, no, you're just addicted to it. It's super convenient. It's really cool. But, it listens to everything. It does all this stuff. So we have to make those adjustments. But I think like what you're saying, that integration is about commanding control over your everyday, right? Like you're in control of it. Not anyone else. There's always going to be an outside force, but in general, we still make the choice to accept it, how we respond, all that kind of stuff. And we can build these again, little habits, rituals, techniques, and regain control so that we can lead at the highest level. So when you and I are talking, you're the only person I'm speaking to. I'm not thinking about what I'm doing later. Right? We're in this. There's no distractions. Phones are off. There's nothing here. I'm focused for this hour, and that's what we're doing. Right? Well, you should be doing that with everybody. I'd rather have one solid focused hour with my kids than 3 hours where I'm watching TV, looking at my phone, going outside, working in the garage. You know what I mean? And then we have 2 sentences together. You know what I mean? That's not quality time. They're going to get a lot more out of that focused hour than I ever will, like all day. Okay. No one wants to hang out with me all day. I guarantee you. Okay. It's just not, it's going to get old. Okay. I'm a little intense, but hey.
I don't know. It's been a lot of fun.
Yes, it has. It's an hour. See, we're there. We're like, this is it. Rachel's tired of me. It's time to go. That's how it works.
Not at all. Not at all. I can't believe that. Wait, wow. My goodness.
Yeah, we go. This is what STS is. We just have incredible conversations with incredible people. And you are no exception, Rachel. I told you this is going to be awesome. So let's do this since we're wrapping it up. How do people follow you? You know the drill. Follow, connect, social, whatever. Give them the details. We'll have everything in the show notes.
Thank you so much. Well, if you've listened to the show and you've enjoyed what we've been saying, I would love to hear from you. Best place to connect with me is on LinkedIn at Rachael Edmonson-Clarke. And as we talked about at the top of the show, Richard, in the pre-call, if you can add an extra letter to my name, just do it. It's Rachael AEL, it's Edmondson, and it's Clarke with an E. So find me on LinkedIn. I'd love to meet you there. And Richard, thank you so much. It's been so much fun.
So I have loved it. You have brought a lot of value to this conversation. I really appreciate it. I just have a high appreciation for people like you who have dedicated their life to this stuff, like your entire adult career, everything else, and you've really perfected what you do. You continue to learn and research and connect with the right people so that you can share this information. So, and I know people got a lot out of it. I learned a ton. I always like to learn. I get the benefit of doing. That's why I do this. So I get I get the free knowledge. I get to bring it on and share it with others. So it's always a good place to be. But thank you again, and for everybody else, we will see you on the next STS podcast.
And don't forget, revenue feeds the ego, profit feeds the family. So if you want to see how I can show you at least $100,000 in hidden annual profits in less than 3 minutes, and not only show you where, but how to create that 100K in 6 months or less without additional advertising or marketing spend, guaranteed, just go to sharpenthespiritcoaching.com. See how truly simple it is. That's sharpenthespiritcoaching.com. Do it now.